Welcome to our latest episode of the podcast, where we are very excited to have Karen Nepute, a professional skydiver, as our guest. Karen's passion for aviation and skydiving has been a lifelong journey from her early days of climbing up telephone poles to her current record. She has over 3,600 skydives under her belt so far. Join us as we dive into the exciting world with Karen. Karen, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, good evening, Ananya. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
How did you first get involved in the skydiving community, and what was it that drew you to the sport?
It was serendipitous. As a kid, I was a tomboy and I liked climbing on things and I liked hanging upside down. And I always wanted to go fly on a trapeze. When I watched the circus, that was my favorite act. And so I remember like driving to Florida and I always used to see there was a circus, like a place like to go do circus things, but I didn't live in Florida. I was just driving through. And I was like, dang, I'll never get to do that. And then one day I was at work and I used to work in a restaurant and bar type situation. And I was waiting on a group of people and they ended up telling me they were skydivers. And I asked them to tell me more. And they told me more. And I'm like, well, I want to go do it. And they go, oh, it's just 45 minutes away. It's across the lake. And, I lived in New Orleans at the time. I'm like, okay. And they go, hey, we're going to this bar down in the French Quarter. Would you like to join as a skydiver owns it? I'm like, sure. Okay. So I went out with these guys and we didn't really go to bed till the sun came up. And needless to say, no one skydived that weekend. But the next weekend, I got my sister and myself. I talked her into it, and we both went through the first jump course, and we made our first skydive that day. I went on to continue making skydives, and my sister never jumped again. That was it. She was a one and done, and I got bit.
Yeah. Me and my family, we've been saying, okay, when you turn 18, turn 19 for your birthday, we're going to take you skydiving. And I'm excited. We'll see how it goes.
So, how old are you now?
I'm 17, so just a few more years to go.
One more year. So I would hope you would ask to jump with me. I would love to take, I mean, I won't be your tandem master, but I can be in the air with you and fly up to you and touch you and all that. I would love it. I think, and you'll get a different perception of the skydive because with a tandem, you are on the front end of the tandem master. So, and you have nothing else in your view. You have the world and you have a great panoramic view, but to see another person fly up and put it into perspective, that's really cool. Or a friendly face and stuff. That's what it's really all about to me as well.
Yeah,
So, yes,
so that'd be
yes.
really fun.
Do it. Please reach out.
I will. So you already started telling me a bit about your first experience skydiving with your sister. Tell me how it felt like.
I like going fast. I like taking risks, I guess, but I don't really call it risk taking. Going up in the plane, it's a lot. The gear's all back then, the gear was old military surplus gear with a belly mount reserve. It wasn't made for women. It was heavy, it was uncomfortable, getting this little Cessna airplane. And back then, or where I came from, like they had a hand prop the aircraft and they had a screwdriver in the cockpit to, start it. So, I mean, or that should have told you something. So a regular static line, you only went up to 2,800 feet. Today in the sport, FAA, we have to be in the saddle under canopy by 2,500 feet. We need to pull by 2,500 feet. So you see the difference. 2,800 feet really isn't that high per se. And then, you just hook to a 30-foot, static line and the canopy opens up and then you're all by yourself. And so like you're in this aircraft and it's really loud and they open the door and it gets windier, louder and colder. And then they tell you to climb out on the strut and you got a lot of wind coming out at you when you're trying to climb out the strut of on an airplane. Most people have never experienced that. So you have to go out on your own. So you have to have the desire to do this. And I've always thought that I would be leery of someone who had no fear. And I think you have some people that are apprehensive, which I think is good. And then there are the people that are just scared out of their minds. And, so maybe they'll get over it, but maybe they should go away. So, but anyway, I remember just jumping out and it was all this noise. It was like sensory overwhelm. And then once I left the aircraft and my parachute open, it was just quiet, right?
Just
And then
gliding
I
out.
woke up and it was just this big, it was orange and white round parachute. And then it's like, oh, okay. And like I went through a 8-hour jump class. And so like you got to find the ground, where is the drop zone? Where am I going to land? And so yeah, that's what it's about.
Wow. Yeah, you just told us a bit about the process of getting up there and all the steps that are involved. So can you also describe the training process to become a skydiver, either professionally or just what it takes?
So the training programs for skydiving has changed over the years. At first, it was just static climb. There was no other training. And then they came up with something called accelerated free fall, where it allowed a person to go through a first jump class, just like you did in static climb, which was 8 hours long. But in this class, you are going to jump out with two licensed instructors, and they're going to be holding on to you, and you're the student. But remember I told you about being overwhelmed by all these senses, like the wind, the cold, and your body shuts down. So if you go out with two other people, you might have that moment of, sensory overload, but then they can kind of like shake you or tap you and they go, hey, hey. And then you look, oh, there's a friendly face. And then you can get into the skydive. And, the free fall time is like 50 seconds. So if we sat quiet for 50 seconds, it would be quite a long time. Right. And so during that time, you're as a student, you have to practice showing me. You show me, I know where my ripcord is. I know where the how to open my parachute, and you're touching it. And you got to do it 3 times. And if you don't touch it, I'm there and I could guide your hand to it. And you go, oh, okay, I feel it. I know where it's at. And we also want you to be very mindful of your altitude. So we kind of teach you to scan, look out, look around, and then look at the altimeter so you know how high you are, because at 5,500 feet, you're going to have to wave off, which tells us I'm fixing to pull, and then you'll open your parachute. But if you don't, you still have 2 people hanging on to you. And so one person would leave, but the other one would pull it for you, or would give you every opportunity to pull. So that is the way it's taught today, more or less, opposed to when I did it. The ground school was totally on the ground, and basically they threw me out of the plane, and I was on my own.
Figure it out now on your own.
Yeah. So anyway, that
Yeah.
was a learning curve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have an impressive record of skydiving achievements, as you shared with me, including many records. Can you tell us about one of your proudest moments in your skydiving career?
It was the 200 way. It was a world record 200 way. We did it in 1993 in Myrtle Beach. I can't remember like what was the next larger size below it, but the guy put it together. The whole experience was really well done, because they put us up at a resort off of Myrtle Beach, and we all stayed in villas, and like it was like this golf course, and so and it was right against the Atlantic Ocean, and it's like we take a little bus to the airport, and then we'd all go up, and like I don't know how many aircraft we had, quite a few, maybe like 7 or 8, or maybe more, maybe 10. Anyway, and then we jumped out, and we built this beautiful formation, and it really had never been done. And we kind of learned as we went, because there was a lot of tension, and we had to keep doing it again. And I think we were giving it like 20 something attempts, and we were down to the very last attempt. Like if we don't get it, we're not going to get it. And we all went up, and we thought we had it, but you never know until you review the video, because like one person out, or one wrong grip, or not enough time. And anyway, when we landed, like how people like to tease you, like they come up with a very solemn face, and they go, well, and then they go, oh, congratulations, you made the record. Anyway, so the whole thing, it was just such a very positive experience, and fun and memorable.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of pressure, but it also does sound really fun. Yeah. So you also spoke to me about the different types of aircrafts and hot air balloons and all the things you've jumped out of. I understand there's a difference between all of them. Like, But could you explain that a bit more? Like the difference between jumping out of, for say, like a C-182 versus like a hot air balloon?
Okay, well, a Cessna or any aircraft you're jumping out of, the aircraft itself has a forward speed. Say it's flying at 100 knots, 90 knots, whatever. So therefore, your body is moving forward at 90 knots, right? So when your body leaves the aircraft, there was movement, there was motion, there was speed. So it's not like you just fell out of something. You had forward motion going on. So it's not like 0 to something. You were already traveling at a speed. So when your body goes out, it's like if you were traveling in a car and you rolled down the window and you stuck your hand out palm up, the wind's hitting your hand. And then if you change your hand, the angle, and now your hand's like the point of an arrow, it will slice through the wind. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but that's kind of a thing with the air. But so there's a thing called subterminal velocity. When you leave the aircraft, you have forward momentum. So you're at subterminal. You're not at the speed you will be when you're free falling for, over 15 seconds, but you still have the speed of the aircraft. And then the speed will pick up and then you will be terminal velocity. So going back to the difference between a Cessna 182 and a hot air balloon, when you jump out of a hot air balloon, the hot air balloon's not moving at all. It's dead. It's usually just hanging there and hovering in the air. Yeah. And so when you jump out, you fell out of something. Like there's dead air, right? And so then you have to build up that speed. So they're totally different. Like there's one's just like totally, it's just like raw air. Yeah. Anyway, so I hope that helps explain it.
Yeah, talking about subterminal and terminal velocity, we're actually covering that right now in my IB physics class. And we were going over examples of skydivers and like at what point will you reach terminal? And I was just thinking of you. I was like,
Well, yeah. I mean, the difference too, and like, even though they say everybody falls, an object falls at the same rate of speed, it's not true per se. You can change the angle. Like I said, the demonstration, or if you stuck your hand out the car window and it hits the whole palm, that wind is a horizontal, it's a vertical wind. And then if you change your hand into an arrow, now you're going much faster because you have less surface area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
So when I leave the aircraft, if I'm flying belly down, like if it's just something, I'm doing a 4-way or something, and everybody's right there, when you leave the aircraft, you're together, you don't have to go fast. But if I'm doing an event where it's 40 ways or something, I'm the last one out of an aircraft. The people that left the aircraft first left like 7 seconds before me. So I'm not going to get into some sort of algebraic equation, but they're quite a ways away from me when I leave the plane. So I have to make up the difference. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be a quarter of a mile. And so I have to change my speed, and I have to travel, like I got to make like an arrow, and then pick up my speed to like 180 miles an hour or 200 miles an hour. And then I have to stop, which those are all fun things to do.
That's really fast. I didn't know it went to like 180. It's crazy fast.
Well, if you change the angle of attack, yes. If you're not flat and stable, and then you can, which is crazy, super fun. Yeah.
Have you ever had a close call or a scary moment while skydiving? And if so, if you're in a moment of panic, how would you calmly handle it, and what are the steps to take?
I think the thing for me, I don't panic. You have to kind of step away and keep your cool, because if you panic, it's not a good reaction. You have to identify. So you got to let your training take over. And the training is designed, it's like drilled into you. Like, what are you going to do in case of this? It's not like, oh, I don't know. Let me think about it. Oh gosh, I knew that answer, blah, 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 blah. Well, by the time you did that, you've only got so many seconds. So that doesn't cut it. So it's got to be, it's like identify. And it's easy. Is it a good canopy or a bad canopy? Okay, it's a bad canopy. What are you going to do? Well, I have to get rid of it. All right, how do I get rid of it? Well, I do boom, boom, and identify, verify, react, period. Because it's seconds. By the time, I free fall for a minute, and then when I get lower to the ground, I open up my parachute. But if there's a problem with it, I only have seconds. And so you have to be confident in your ability that I can react. And I think skydivers, they do keep their calm. They don't panic. I mean, you can't stay in the sport if you're someone that panics. Yeah. And then I did have, when I had like 30 something jumps, I was still jumping round canopies, and I'm still jumping military surplus gear. And this was the old cape well system, like, like these old harness, and you had cape wells, like there were wires, and you had to pull them like with each thumb and pull them down. And they were really hard. And the belly mount reserve, and the belly mount reserves didn't have pilot chutes in them, the ones that we had anyway. And like they were told, like you pull the ripcord handle and then you punch the bag, like punch it, and the parachute's supposed to come out. Well, I had a total malfunction when I went to pull my ripcord. I pulled once and it wouldn't budge, and I pulled twice, it still wouldn't budge. And in my training, it said you pull 2 times. If you have a hard pull, we're going to call this a hard pull. I gave it 2 tries and nothing happened. And my training said you have to pull the reserve. And so I pulled and punched the reserve. Nothing much really kind of happened. And I just remember, like, it's on my belly, and I just kind of like picked it up and I just started throwing it into the air, because like I don't have anything else to do. And it opened like probably like treetop. And then it kind of vacillated down between the trees, and it set me down between this dirt road, and my butt went into a little dry ditch on the side of the road. And somebody came along later and found me in a very timely manner. But when I got back to the drop zone, a lot of them thought I didn't make it. But yeah, so I think if I would have like pulled once, pull twice, and go, well, this is stupid, why won't it come, and then keep tugging. Do you understand? So you have to let the training take over. And in hindsight, when we looked at the rig, I think some pea gravel got up in the hardware, and when I tried to pull, there was pea gravel in it, which I never would have probably gotten loose. So that was memorable. And I realized, like, if something ever happened in the future, I would be fighting the whole way. And so, and I'm doing something I love. So.
Yeah. I'm glad to see it's very systematic. You always know. I think that, it does come with the training. You have to know what to do if anything goes wrong.
Right. There's no one to ask. It's not like, I know that answer. Let me check.
Hey, instructor. Hey, I'm kind of stuck in a spot here. You have any tips for me?
What should I do? Should I keep it or should I get rid of it? And there's the saying, we have a lot of saying, when in doubt, whip it out. Like when you don't really know, like put something over your head. So anyway, that's kind of, I still play by those rules.
Yeah. So moving on to the next question. What is your favorite experience in your career so far?
My favorite. Oh, I think I have a lot. Like, we keep logbooks. And back when I first started, I had very meticulous logbooks. I even had a stamp man. Like, I stamped out every formation we did and who I jumped with. And it was like, if I have a diary, it's those logbooks. But because I have so many now, I've gotten kind of lazy, and I'll just write all the jumps I made in one day. But then I'll write if it's a really special jump or something funny happened. So there's a lot of memorable jumps, and sometimes they don't actually pop out in my head right now. But if there's someone I run into that I know, and oh yeah, remember that jump, and that da 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 da, and probably you remember the mess ups more so than completions. But I can tell you why. We were in Arizona, and it was the last jump of the day, and the organizer, he created a signature dive, and it was a 36-way. I think I have a picture. I don't know where that picture is now that I think about it. Anyway, it was a 36-way diamond, but we launched it out of 2 aircraft. One was a Skyvan, the other one was an Otter. And when you see the picture, the finished picture, everybody's facing outward. So basically, the first point, there's 36 people in free fall. It's like a choreographed dance. We all came together, and then on a key, like someone nodded their head, there was 2 hinges, and this thing kind of unhinged and moved around, and everybody became out facing, and it resembles a diamond, which was it was just like in that feeling, and it was very quiet, meaning levels like everybody was flying the same, and it felt really good. I mean, those are the skydives you remember, and I have in my logbook, very quiet. Like some skydives look good, it's a pretty picture, but you go, man, there was a lot of noise going on that. There was a lot of levels and stuff like that. So the pictures can be deceiving, but when you have those, I don't want to say perfect skydives, but those moments where it just all comes together and you just know. And like, I think we were in Chicago for an event, and you just know when they're that, you can feel it in the air. It's just yeah. Anyway, so I went back to my logbook. Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember that. So
yeah, so
like,
too many favorite memories to find just one. That's always a good problem. It's always a
yeah.
Okay, final question. What's next for you in your skydiving journey? Are there any new goals you're working towards?
Actually, I'm going back to my roots. So when I started jumping, the drop zone I jumped at, we had a Cessna 182 and we had a Twin Beach. But I was a newer jumper and stuff, so I kind of came through with 3 other newer jumpers, and we did a lot of 4-way. And I just remember those days, and such fond memories, because it took forever to get to the altitude. It took, oh my gosh, like 40 minutes to get to 10 grand in this aircraft. And like sometimes, like the end of the day, we'd order a pizza and we'd take the pizza up with us in the plane and eat our pizza on the way up. But you get to know people, and then launching the exits out of a Cessna were really fun. But 4-way, it's the building blocks, it's your basics, and you're using it's so mental, because like you've got 50-60 seconds of working time where you practice this choreographed dance on the ground. And then you do it in the air, and it's, a good skydive, physically in shape, good hand-eye coordination, but you have to have good mental facilities, like, because you've got to remember it's, where you're going to be, blah, 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 blah. And so it's fast, but you want to be smooth. And so I'm doing a 4-way competition next week. I have a little 4-way team, and we're going into the iFly wind tunnel here in Austin to practice next Thursday night. And our team name is The Sufficients. Anyway, I thought it was cool. I made it up. So I want to do some more smaller stuff. The big stuff's fun, but it's more like it's much slower pace. Like I dive out of the plane and I find my slot, and then I go up to it. And there's not a whole lot of mental, I have to remember where I'm going and stuff. They're different. But I've been doing the bigger stuff, and I don't get the opportunity to do the small stuff. And I've been doing it because we're doing this team, and I really like it. And so that's where I'm going right now.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I hope you have a great time.
Yeah, I plan on it. Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us today. That's a wrap for this episode. Listeners, we hope you really enjoyed hearing from Karen about her incredible experiences. And Karen, your journey is nothing short from inspiring. Thank you once again for coming on here.
Well, thank you for having me, Ananya.